That's fine. All right, here's the music.
What the fuck was that? It was like a teletype.
No, that was... Yeah, it was like news around the world.
Yeah.
This week on Storied.
Yeah. Hey, welcome to Storied, a podcast where we take one type of media and transform it into another.
This week we're going to be taking one of my all-time favorite movies, and I'm not kidding when I say that, Predator, and turning it into a video game.
Do you say that ironically a lot?
No.
Like, I love this movie.
No, I really do love that movie.
So do you not like other movies?
Nope.
That we've done so far?
Just
he doesn't
Predator.
like anything else. Yeah, it's the only movie he likes.
I watch it every night.
I just watch it daily.
Yeah.
Put it on loop before I go to bed.
Yeah, but before we launch into the podcast, though, I wanted to mention something that was bizarre to us. So we started this podcast, and we found out after we started the podcast that Rocket Jump, Freddie Wong's company that did all kinds of good stuff like Video Game High School and a bunch of YouTube videos years ago, and they have like a show on YouTube, and they have like a series of videos about how to do stuff, how to film things. Just a cool company all around. They also did a podcast called Story Break that's very similar to what we do. We haven't actually listened to it yet for fear that it would influence us in some way. And then we recorded last week's episode, the Kellogg's Cinematic Universe podcast, and found out that Story Break had also done a Kellogg's Cinematic Universe episode.
It's funny that they picked the same brand of cereal, too. Like, it wasn't like a General Mills or a Post, or like a Quaker Oats. It's Kellogg's. I guess because Kellogg's Cinematic Universe sounds good. So it makes sense. But yeah.
Well, and they have better mascots. I mean, their mascots are just much better, which is why we picked it, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, good point.
Incredibly strange, but true. You should check that podcast out. We certainly will be in the near future. I think all of us have been a little bit busy since we found out, but definitely want to hear what their take on it was. Which
and then just be like, God damn, cool. It's way better than ours.
Yeah, it probably will be. And then we will go back and delete the Kellogg's episode, and then also delete any mention of it from this episode.
Yeah, it's going to be weird. It's going to be a weird blank space in our repertoire. So
get prepared for the redacted episodes to come.
Oh, man, we should just release the entire episode normally, but just bleep out anytime we say the word Kellogg's or Tony the Tiger or like anything. So it's just a podcast that is unlistenable because everything that isn't interesting has been bleeped out, but we leave the podcast on the air.
So not only is that a great idea, Harrison, but I'm volunteering you to do the work.
That sounds great. That sounds like not a lot of work at all.
Cool. All right, anyway, so let's talk about Predator.
I want to hear why Chris's favorite movie of all time.
That might be a little bit of rewriting what I said, but...
I'm pretty sure you said those words.
It's really... I think it's just one of those movies when you see it when you're a kid, and it's like one of the coolest things you've ever seen, and it still kind of tickles that part of you, But it is cool. I mean, it's like unapologetically like the big... dumb muscle guys fighting things, and it's well executed. Like it is a pretty there's tension. The action sequences are cool. Like I totally forgot until I watched it again this past week how there's some of the dumb action guy lines in it.
Oh yeah,
when he throws a knife into the guy and he's like, "Stick around." It's so stupid. But
it's funny because there's like two or three of them.
Contractually obligated.
Yeah, but there's not that many of them. Like they do that.
Yeah.
Classic. Okay, we're gonna go into the camp of bad guys and just completely blow them up. And that scene goes on for way too long. So
ridiculous.
They keep blowing stuff up and cutting back to a gun shooting a guy and cut back to a hut exploding and cut back to more guys getting shot. It's like a 5-minute sequence full of just dudes getting shot. 50 to 100 people die, and then they do their classic action movie lines of knock knock, who's there? And kill a bunch of dudes, and then they never do it again. Once the tone shifts and they're like, "Oh fuck, we're getting hunted by this alien," all of that just drops out of the movie, which is really interesting.
Well, the actually weird thing too is that I don't know why they're there. Really, if I remember correctly, why are they there? They just seem to be killing villagers. It's just horrible. I guess I don't know if it was a Panama thing. if they were trying to, like, you know, because it was the 80s and they were just trying to get back at somebody or whatever. But it's just they kind of go in there and just
I'm angry,
murder people, indiscriminately murder people. I don't know if they're like.
No,
really like a
they're like rebels,
or what is it supposed to be?
They're sent in there by Carl Weathers to like extract some diplomat or something, and they find out when they get there that it's like a camp full of rebels that have been armed by Russians. This is back in the 80s, right? So the Cold War.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, the rebels the rebels are being armed by the Russians. So I think it's probably like Nicaragua or Panama or some sort of like, you know, South American, sort of generic South American. They just call them the rebels, right? But they speak Spanish.
Yeah.
And they go in there and they realize that Carl Weathers kind of told them a lie and got them to go in there and blow up all these people. Yeah. It's like, you know, you wouldn't have done this if I had, you know, told you that it was this particular type of mission. And there's this weird animosity between Carl Weathers and the entire team.
That's why
I love that you call him Carl Weathers every time.
His name is Carl Weathers. It's one word.
You can't call him anything else.
Carl, I guess, but then it could be any number of Carls. I want to be specific about which Carl it is.
Yeah.
Which 80s Carl it is.
That is, his name is actually Dylan in the movie, and that was like...
It's Dylan! It's the best name!
I know, but that was like, it's the movie that's got the most, like, everybody's got like a one-syllable, like badass single guy name. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
It's so stupid, but so awesome at the same time.
It's like Mac and Blaine and Dutch.
Hawkins.
Yeah. Poncho.
Sonny. Yeah.
And then Billy.
Yep.
Oh, Sonny. Yeah, Sonny's the actor.
Yeah.
Sonny's the actor. Played Billy. Yeah, sorry. I got it mixed up. Billy, yeah, shit. Well, we should also mention that this is the second John McTiernan movie we have talked about in a row. John McTiernan went on to make Die Hard, of course.
Oh, man.
Right after this movie, I think. I don't think he did anything in between. So, you know, we have to do Hunt for Red October next week or something and turn it into a...
what is the very next
game
movie he did? We can just turn this podcast into a John McTiernan podcast and just chronologically go through his movies.
It's Hunt for Red October. Yeah. Well...
Oh, damn. Okay.
We can adapt his legal troubles.
To a nonfiction movie?
Yeah.
Oh, man. The John McTiernan story.
Just him doing blow, like we do like a biopic. You know, it starts out with him just doing blow off hookers in the 80s and shooting movies like Die Hard.
It could be literally any director. That's every director in the 80s, though.
I know, but it's his rags to riches story, right? It's like Goodfellas. We do it where he's everything's amazing in Hollywood until oops, I forgot to file my taxes. It's like really fucking boring after that.
Yeah, perfect. That sounds like a movie I'd love to see.
It's exciting until that point. Yeah. And then the whole third act is just him sitting in a prison cell, like making movies on his wall.
Just dreaming of movies he's gonna make, and then we dramatize those. Yeah.
Oh, so we just do like a pastel fade through to like his imagination, where he's like directing all these incredible movies and getting all these awards and shit.
Yeah, he's like storyboarding on the wall in chalk or blood.
Who gave him that chalk?
Yeah. I was going to say shit, but...
It could be shit. Sorry, John McTiernan. We don't mean any defamation here. We really appreciate your movies.
Yeah, please don't sue us.
So, anyway, we're going to turn John McTiernan into a video game. I mean, Predator.
John McTiernan playing the Predator in a Predator video game.
Yeah.
So there've been a handful of Predator games. There's like the Alien versus Predator games, and those are somewhat more well known. But there's definitely other Predator games. I kind of looked into it before we started the podcast, and like what Predator games exist. And there's one that is like, there's like a Sega Genesis game, which is kind of like a twin stick shooter, and there's a couple of different ones, but nothing really ever got like acclaim or got any sort of like notice from anybody because they were just kind of like cheesy tie-ins. But there was one, and I'm trying to find it now, but there was like a Predator video game called like Predator
Concrete Jungle,
like Concrete Jungle or Urban Hunters or some shit like that. Concrete Jungle. And like the premise is fucking incredible, where you're a predator and you're in the city like a la Predator 2, and you're like stalking and hunting like mafia members. And then you fail at some point, and you like try and self-destruct, and you can't. Like the self-destruct doesn't work or something, and you are exiled to a planet somewhere. But like in the meantime, the mafia dudes like find all your technology and start like using your like fancy alien guns to like take over the city and fight other mafia members. It's fucking amazing. It sounds so ridiculous.
I was gonna say I didn't know. I knew about this game. I never played it, but I don't know how you.
I'm just reading the Wikipedia page.
That sounds pretty great. I actually do want to play
it. Yeah. Well, okay, but like I think you come back. You come back as that disgraced hunter and go back into that world, but they all have guns that are like powerful. I guess it's a game conceit, so they can actually harm you with guns and stuff, so that you're not like invincible and shit. But yeah, it seems like it's one of those like the humans got a hold of your alien tech and somehow like manufactured more of them, and now you have to like go and kill them all, which is a fucking ridiculous conceit for a video game.
So we're gonna make Concrete Jungle 2 then.
Perfect.
Yeah. All the money the EA has. So it's interesting to think that. So Shane Black, who was Hawkins in the original movie, by the way, and who wrote and directed like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang and Iron Man 3 and The Nice Guys,
Monster Squad.
Oh, that's crazy.
Monster Squad.
He wrote Monster Squad
And Lethal Weapon and Lethal Weapon 2 and The Last Boy Scout.
Oh my god, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know it was the same guy.
Yeah,
as far as I know,
he's all
only
over.
acting role too is in Predator.
I also heard this might be an apocryphal story, but I did hear that they brought him down there to try and get him to do some doctor work on the script. That's why they hired him as an actor.
Oh man,
because he'd already sold Lethal Weapon, I think, at that point, and he was like hot shit. And so he was like, "Nah." And then they were like, "Okay," and they were just stuck.
Like, well, I guess you're still in the movie. Fuck.
Yeah. It was, yeah. So anyway,
that's awesome. That's a great story.
But he's doing the new Predator. Is that what you were getting to?
Yeah. So I was getting to. There's a Predator movie coming out this year. That's coming out later this year called The Predator, and there's very little known about it, except that potentially it takes place in the suburbs.
Oh my
which
god!
Is kind of incredible and weird.
Keegan-Michael Key's in it.
He is. And Fred Decker who also co-wrote the Monster Squad with him and Night of the Creeps by himself, which is an amazing film if nobody's seen it. And I mean amazing in that it's awful, but also amazingly good. Then it knows it's bad.
Wow.
Anyway, those two guys are making a new Predator movie. So if we're gonna make a game, feels like maybe making a game that takes place in the suburbs. Might be a way to go.
Yeah, I'm down with like trying to make a game that somewhat predicts the next Predator movie and tries to make a game as what we would imagine that movie would be, but a video game. That could be interesting.
Here's what we should do. You're playing as a bunch of kids, like a la Stranger Things or E.T., and the Predator shows up in the neighborhood and only you can stop it.
Just
the
Attack
cops
the
don't
Block
believe it.
video game, like, which also would be a good video game, but yeah. Except it's not like in Stranger Things where the Demogorgon like shows up now and again and like hassles people, and sometimes they get killed, sometimes they get away. Like the Predator would just absolutely annihilate these children. Like they'd stand zero chance.
You just die in the first level.
You play as it's like the opening of Last of Us, where you just play as the kid, and then you just get fucking ruined by a Predator. and taken as a trophy to his like alien ship.
Well, here's what happens. Like you're with like 3 of your friends, and then like one by one you see the little 3 dots. Because you're playing with toy guns, and the Predator doesn't know the difference because he doesn't harm people if they're unarmed.
That's true.
Then, you just see them one by one get destroyed by alien weaponry, and then
these humans are really small.
Never catch him, and then you're like 20 years pass, and he comes back.
Oh my god, it's like revenge. Somehow you get away.
Yeah.
It sounds really fucked up.
I'm just horribly imagining just kids standing around and then one of them looking down and seeing that 3 dots on their chest and then exploding in a thing of like a fine mist, like a red mist, just blowing up. Call it Predator Red Mist.
Perfect. God.
Yeah. But Bill Duke has to be in it, right? Bill Duke has to come back and do a voice because he's the best.
He was actually like his performance in that, like now that I'm older and watched it with like a different eye, his performance is like creepily good. It was like my favorite performance in the movie watching it now. Like he's just like weird in the way he like shaves with no
it's like his like weird like affectation when he's like getting ready for a fight. He starts to just shave his face.
Yeah, it's really weird. But his like, I don't know. There's something about his performance that was like felt weirdly authentic to like a soldier, even though it wasn't at all.
Well, he's the only character that goes through any sort of like other than getting killed, and I guess Billy as well, kind of, but like he's the one who like suffers a loss when Jesse Ventura dies, and he was like really close with him, and it sort of like puts him on this weird emotional place where he's kind of like teetering on the edge of what's that?
Where he's shaving.
Yeah, where he's shaving. But like that's what he did normally. Like when they're flying in on the chopper, like that's this weird like pre-war ritual. But he like kind of loses it a little bit when Jesse Ventura dies, and he like goes on this crazy vengeance path, and he just like mows the trees down with the minigun and just is like screaming and kind of losing it. And I don't feel like any other character really gets a moment like that, or like a sort of like small amount of like arc, you know. Every other character just kind of like hangs out and then is dead.
Yeah. Well, and then there's that moment when he like takes the flask and he like drinks from it and he puts it under Blaine's like body bag, and then they have that amazing Alan Silvestri score playing when it's like basically like a kind of like a taps.
That fucking score, man. That fucking score. We were talking about it a moment before you came on, Sean. Like, it sounds like the Back to the Future score. In places, it should not tonally sound like the Back to the Future score. Like, sometimes it's really like deep, and you got like the hi hat, and you've got like this military thing going on, and sometimes it's just like cymbals and the tambourine. They're like going through the forest trying to like track down rebels, and it sounds like the Back to the Future, like Marty's skateboarding in town soundtrack, and it's fucking tonally all over the place, and it's weird.
It's perfect.
Works though.
All right. Well, I guess I'm not going to win this fight because both.
I love that score. It's ridiculous. I'll give it that, but I think I've just listened to it before, outside of the movie.
It just struck me that when I watched the movie recently, that just like, oh my god, I forgot how. Like, they're going through the forest and like silently using hand signals to surround these rebels and like stabbing them in the chest and like doing all these crazy maneuvers while these like tambourines are playing. It's fucking weird,
well,
man.
And then you know it gets quiet for a second, and then you hear diddle diddle.
Right.
Yeah,
right. Exactly. Yeah. It's fucking bizarre. It's good. It's just weird. It's weirdly lighthearted, I guess, because it knows it's a stupid, cheesy action movie, so it's never going to take things super seriously. And it does, like, when the Predator starts killing people, it gets pretty dark, and the music definitely changes here and there, but still, sometimes they're traipsing through the forest, and there's fucking tambourines are playing in the background, and, like, the brass is kind of just going for it, and it's so weird. But
so how are we going to tie that into the video game? We're going to get Alan Silvestri back for the score?
Yeah, why not? We could probably do that. What else is he doing? Probably, nothing, except a lot of things.
I don't know if he does that much work anymore. I feel like he just kind of doesn't. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Should look it up. So what kind of game are we making here? Like,
that's a really good question.
If we did set it in the suburbs, right? I feel like the obvious thing, and this is terrible because it's every game in the last 5 years, but like it's like a crafting. You're crafting fucking like lawnmower parts into like weapons, or what we do is we make a comment on American society, and everybody's just got an AR-15.
Oh man. Every single garage you go into just has ammo lying around.
Oh my god, this is the worst stupid idea I've ever had, but I'm going to pitch it anyway.
Do it.
It's in the suburbs, right? But it's in the suburbs that is an enclave for a bunch of like doomsday preppers.
Oh man,
up in the mountains or something like that. So you build the whole town up in the mountains there, and you can wander it. And the Predator's hunting you through it and into the woods.
It's like a weird Mormon town that has like a wall around it. It's like a compound.
Yeah. It's like a Mormon town. Well, I don't know about that, but yeah.
There's like a town in Utah that has, it's like a Mormon like neighborhood, but it has this giant wall around it.
Really?
Anyway,
I've not heard about this.
Maybe not that much, but yeah. So they build it.
But yeah, you get these militia guys who are obsessed with the idea that the government is going to try and come take them away or something, and then they end up getting into this this cult almost enclave situation where they just have a bunch of shit.
It's like the free men of Montana, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they don't come on. There's like you literally open like with a sign getting driven into the ground that says like "Stay off our property" or whatever. And then the predator
ask questions later.
Predator kills that guy, putting the sign in.
No, so the sign is getting hammered into the ground, and it sort of like gets knocked into frame from above, and then the guy turns to leave, and then just gets his head cut off, and that sign just gets covered in, like drenched in blood.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, and thinking about like what's persistent with the Predator franchise is it's always about hunting, essentially. It's always a game to the Predator. Or I haven't seen Predator 2 in a long time, but
it's a similar situation.
And I've never seen the Alien versus Predators, because I don't feel like I'm missing much. But there was the Predators sequel that came out a couple years ago, like 2010 maybe. Predators that kind of had it wasn't a great movie, but it had an interesting setup in which like that could have been cool, where the Predators basically just took a bunch of like predators from Earth and just like dropped them onto a game planet, like a la The Most Dangerous Game. So
wasn't one of them Topher Grace?
Yeah.
And he was playing like a fucking like doctor or something.
Yeah,
he was
that was the twist at the end, that he was actually a serial killer, and that's why he was there the whole time.
Yeah.
You know what's weird? Here's what's weird. I saw that movie in theaters and have absolutely no recollection of it until you mentioned Topher Grace's name. Then all of the memories that I had like locked away in a vault came flooding back, and I was like, "Wait a second! Isn't Lawrence Fishburne in that movie? And he's hiding in the ship because he can't get away." Holy shit! I've seen this movie.
The thing I remember the most is Adrian Brody's weird triangular upper body. Because it looked like he only bulked up like his arms, his lats, and his deltoids, and then like the rest, he just left the rest of it. It was really weird.
Amazing.
Only the stuff that was visible outside of his vest. It was like,
right, of course.
Let's take care of the rest with wardrobe.
You got to prioritize. You can bulk out your pants with some padded pants. It's fine.
That's how I work out.
Man, that is wild that I've seen that movie, and I was looking at researching for this episode. I'm like, I was looking at all the movies that had come out. And I'm like, I don't think I've seen that. I should check that out. And then as soon as you mentioned Topher Grace being a murderer, because they're all like abducted, isn't it? Like they're all like abducted in their beds, and they wake up on this planet together.
The movie starts with Adrian Brody just falling from the sky.
That's right.
And then he just lands and hits the ground and like finds everybody else, and they're all like, "What the fuck? How do we get here?" It's not.
Do you think
it's not great?
Do you think that
enjoyed watching it, but it's not good?
Do you think that like the Predator is like just a trophy hunter, as in the way that humans are trophy hunters, where like he goes back to his like dentistry job on like Monday morning, or like a huge swath of people from this culture don't like want to. Like they just kind of live their life, and there's once in a while like these weird like weekend warrior predators go off and like go hunting humans, and then come back and
it's like
put like mount heads on their like wall of their the dentistry job. Do you think that's how it works?
Absolutely.
I think you're doing like a Rick and Morty thing now. You turn into Rick and Morty all of a sudden.
That's true. That's a good point. Yeah, but
he goes
that's what I
off
think
and
about.
He comes home and he kisses his wife, but he can't do it because he like bites her by accident.
Their mandibles sort of lock together in a weird way. Yeah, I don't know. It's weird because like they're obviously the pitch for this movie was like, what if trophy hunters hunt humans? Like an alien trophy hunter hunts a human, right? That was the like the tag, like the elevator pitch for this movie. But if to follow that metaphor, like trophy hunters in like human of human species don't just live that life forever unless they're poachers, I guess. They kind of like do it, go on a safari and like bag a bunch of animals. And are shitbirds, and then they go back to their like rich person job at the end of the week, right? So I've always wondered, like, is this entire culture just one of hunters, or do you think that like it's just a handful of dudes?
The question is like, what do they do when they're not hunting?
It's like preparing for a hunt.
It's like like the entire culture seems to be based around hunting, but it doesn't make any sense. It's like you would never have made it off the planet.
Yeah, they have all this advanced technology. Like they must have scientists and shit.
Yeah. So back to the game.
Sorry.
I was going to say this is the game that we're making. It's not about the hunting. It's about the rest of the Predator toys.
Yeah. Well, you're the scientist, and you stay in your lab and you craft hunting materials for your hunting buddies. And they knock you over the head and you're like, all right, nerd, is my stuff ready? And that's the game. All right.
So the kind of game we could make here, right? Like, there's always the temptation is to play as the Predator, right?
Right.
But I think it'd be better to not do that, or you have like a multiplayer thing where somebody plays the Predator and everybody else is trying to get out. You know, it's a la that Friday the 13th game that came out. But we kind of go straight into our Nightmare on Elm Street territory there. That episode, we talked quite a bit about, potentially doing a multiplayer thing there, but I think we landed on not doing that. But, the Predator's got all the cool weaponry and stuff, but I think the game would, it feels easy, right? Unless you change that up in a way. Like, it feels like the game's going to be, you have too many advantages. And then if you win, like, humanity kind of dies, so that doesn't feel like a good way to start.
That's why it feels weird to me too, because you would just be killing people. Like that's your goal.
Yeah.
Is to just murder people.
The Alien vs Predator games were multiplayer, and one person would play the Alien, one person would play the Predator, and then like a squad would play like the Alien 2 style Marines, the Aliens Marines. And you had like the humans would have like a technology that people had like developed in order to combat these things, like knowing they exist. Mm-hmm. But if you were to drop a Predator into, we should just make a drinking game, but of how often we're going to say the word Predator. Like, drink every time we say the word Predator, because holy shit, we're going to say it a lot. But like, if you just drop them into a Predator into a township that has no idea it's there, like I tend to agree with you. Like, it was one of those like serendipitous moments where Arnold Schwarzenegger falls in the mud and doesn't realizes that it's heat seeking and it has like thermal vision. But if you didn't have an opportunity to find that out, you would just be fucking obliterated by this Predator.
Yeah, well, also though, I mean, the first movie he kind of like hunts one at a time, so it could be cool to do something where, I don't know. I mean, it could be both, right? You could do a multiplayer mode where there are different maps, and you have, there's a squad of people. They play together against the Predator. It's like 6 people against 1. The Predator's got a lot of advantages, and like you can find power-ups, or you can find stuff around that allow you to sort of like get a leg up on the Predator.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there's also like but the story mode could be very cool, where it's like you could still introduce the idea that. It's kind of hard with the first movie. The mud like hides him, right? Which I don't think that would actually work. Unless the real heat-seeking thing would still be warm. Yeah. It's like it doesn't make any sense. But like you could make up whatever excuse you wanted, and then have that be the thing that you had to like keep up, or throughout the game you'd have to like, in order to stay hidden. Or, set traps up like they do. They had that whole sequence in the first movie where they set up all these, like, the net and, like, the logs and everything.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think that, like, a crafting system that isn't, like, a traditional, like, Minecraft-style crafting system where you can sort of, like, manipulate the environment to build rudimentary traps that aren't, like... They mentioned in the movie that he can see the tripwires because they're sort of like metal or whatever, but because they're manufactured. But then they start using like vines and ropes and trees and stuff, and like the Predator can't detect that stuff because it's like it just looks like everything else in the forest. So trying to figure out like we're near these trees, and if it is in the suburbs, I guess it would have to be like Malibu palm trees or something. Or I guess if they're in the jungle, then it would be like a lot of trees around you. But you'd have to come up like your crafting system would be really like we have to use what's around us. We can't like take apart machine guns and make a weird explosive trap because he will see that, so we have to use like natural materials, and that could be kind of an interesting balancing thing.
Yeah, it could be kind of cool to, via the story, sort of introduce new mechanics into the game. It's like as people die, be kind of cool to resurrect the we had a long time ago talked about an Aliens game. Where the difficulty doesn't come out of like the enemy's getting harder, but the fact that you have less people around and that the people you do have different skills because they die off in different ways depending on how you play the game. And that could be really a cool way to do this game, right? Where you have basically a group of people that you sort of know what their skills are, and you're the head of them, and you can tell them what to do, and based on what you tell them, they die. Or stay alive, right? Like you're only as good as you are at the time. So, everybody could die because you didn't, get them through the forest or whatever.
Right.
But it could be cool to your medic died, so now nobody can be healed. So how do you handle that? And that's where the difficulty comes from.
That'd be kind of cool. Would the gameplay be kind of like not quite XCOM-y, but like almost like a you know how like you play like Warcraft or StarCraft, like you're kind of playing from like a command point of view, Yeah. Would it be kind of like that, or would you be sticking with the main character and signaling? Like,
that'd be interesting. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of ways you could do it. A lot of times that isometric view and those like XCOM allows you to sort of see the action as it's unfolding. But if you're being hunted by one person, like one invisible enemy, it doesn't really work so much. I think you'd have to decide whether you were going to stop to camp, and if you did, how you were going to set up the perimeter and where the traps would go. And I don't know. I mean, it could be interesting to do combo too, right? Like I've never really seen that where it's you play the game most of the time. Like it'd be cool if like in XCOM you set everything up and then you could kind of get down and play it too.
Yeah.
I mean, that's usually pretty difficult to pull off because it's just so expensive. But like, we're pie in the sky here,
Why make one game when you can make two separate games and put them together?
Yeah.
That always works out well. I think I do like the idea of first person just because I think playing games like Alien Isolation, you get a lot more of that sort of like fear. Like when a thing jumps on you, it's like right in your face. And like like in Suspense where you're hiding in a closet or under a tree or something, and that thing is like crawling by you. Like there's the scene in Predator when Schwarzenegger's like hiding in a tree, like waiting for the Predator to show up, and the Predator ends up just choosing the same tree to hide in. And he can hear him making his clicking sound, which is a stupid conceit, but he can hear him like right behind him, and he cannot move because if he moves, he's going to like detect his movement in his visor. I think that was a really cool, like super tense moment that you wouldn't get if you were 100 miles up and you had a more of like larger view, because I think that thing's terrifying because it could be right next to you and you don't know it. And a God's eye view makes me feel a little bit more powerful because you have vision that like characters wouldn't have.
Right.
Yeah.
I do like the idea of starting in like the same way that the Predator movie kind of like you start in an area. The movie, like the actual Predator stuff starts at the rebel camp, and then from there they're trying to get out. They're trying to get to the extraction zone for the helicopter, and they just have to survive like from point A to point B. But that's actually kind of interesting because you can get a really good sense of how close are you to victory or defeat. Like, oh man, we're only a quarter of the way there and I've already lost half my people. This is going to be a really tough slog. It's in a similar way that XCOM, like, you're not finished with the mission, but you've lost 3 dudes already and you have like 1 guy left. And you're like, oh my God, I don't know how I'm going to pull this off with 1 person left. I think that could be kind of an interesting marker for how, like, the distance you have to travel still before you get to like the victory position,
Well, yeah, you'd have like a goal, like an end goal, and then it could be cool to sort of like branch the paths, like, or something. It's like where we set it in like the mountains, the Appalachians, or we set it in like just somewhere in Wyoming or somewhere, where there's a lot of trees and like a lot of terrain. And then, there's a couple different routes to get to the place, and sometimes you have to choose which is the best one. Like this one's quicker, but it's more dangerous. Just things like that. And based on what you know about your current situation and who you have with you, and like you could decide, okay, I'm going to risk it. I have 2 medics and I have a grenadier, and then. I still have cloaking tech for some reason. I have a bunch of rocks I can throw to fool the Predator because he gets fooled by a rock in the first movie.
Yeah.
Look, what I started to say when I was bringing up hunting earlier, we were still kind of talking about the story and like it being maybe more suburban, hopefully like Suburban Commando, but I was thinking like you could have like the characters in the game could be out on like a hunting-ish expedition, you know, like maybe they're just hunting deer in the woods and like that's where they come across a predator, and then you could work your way back to like a more civilized place, and there could be like stages and just maps. Like you're not going to be able to defeat the predator with just what you have on the hunting expedition, you know.
But because you're a doomsday prepper, you have like a grenade launcher and shit in your garage or in your bomb shelter you're trying to get back to.
Maybe.
That's kind of cool.
And then as you guys were talking about it, like I was thinking, the same kind of idea kind of evolved. And I know you have, Sean, but Harrison, have you ever seen the movie Dog Soldiers?
No.
It's pretty cool. It's a Neil Marshall movie who did like The Descent, and he directs a lot of Game of Thrones now. And it's about this group of soldiers who are like just on like a training exercise in like somewhere in the UK, I think, and they come across this family of like werewolves, which is really bizarre.
Oh man!
But I was wondering if you could do something else like that, where it's like, you know, they're on a training exercise. Maybe it is a U.S. Army outfit, and then like the first level, you come across a predator, and then you start to lose guys, and then it's like, you know, there's this outpost that if you get to, you can get safety or better weapons or whatever it is to combat this thing, and then you get there, and then it attacks the outpost, and maybe you get, you know, it fucks up the outpost and starts killing people, but that's where you get, you know, you do come across a grenade launcher and allows you enough to fight back for that long, you know. And
yeah,
like,
I think that's
you
cool.
can just keep kind of like the chase, you know, the chase doesn't have to stop at the extraction point in this game the way that it did in the movie, right? It can be kind of like survive through this sort of linear story, but you know, it kind of takes you from place to place, and just because you get to one place doesn't mean that you've beat it, if that makes sense.
Right.
It just kind of gives you new advantages because you get access to new weapons, or you get access to new tactics, or you get new people to join your squad that have different skills or something like that.
That's cool.
Might be kind of fun to like have the game evolve as such and kind of have it feel like there's levels to it.
I was thinking that when we were talking about like different, you could go different routes. It reminded me of the old Star Fox game for like the Super Nintendo, where you have a beginning point and you have to get to like the boss, you know, asteroid or whatever. But you can pick which, like the path will branch. So you can go to Sector Z, or you can go to Mobius Planet, and the map will be like every time you play it, you can go a different route, and the map slightly changes. So if you were in the woods and you're trying to get back to a place, you can say you can either take the river or you can go up the mountainside, and it's a very different experience for you.
Yeah,
and like the things you have access to, and the predators like tactics will change. Like if you can swim in the water, maybe that sort of masks your heat, but the predator, like he knows you're in the river somewhere, so he's just gonna like the box you're in is much smaller. Like that could be kind of a cool like split up of like locations, you know, where you have like a branching path and you pick X or Y through each like location, and then eventually it sort of like collapses, like the branches collapse back in again as you get near the end, like quote unquote end of the game.
Boo 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 jabbit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, that game.
No, it would be really good. I think like I think that works for. I mean, it's kind of like the first movie. Also, they're just sort of trying to make their way through, and they have to. I think they have to change. Don't they have to change at some point the direction they're moving in, or they're following that guide. The woman, what's her name?
Anna. Yeah,
they were following her, and you know whether she was trustworthy or not was something that was kind of interesting. But you could have some like. You know, not a whole lot, but some drama around like where people wanted to go and stuff, and that could mean that somebody doesn't go with you. It's like, no, fuck this. Like, you guys are crazy. I'm not going through Death Mountain. You know, like it's cursed.
Yeah. The idea that like people in your squad would have opinions on that is pretty cool. I'm assuming they're all AI, right? But like the fact that like some people would want to like. I want to go this way, and here's the reason. Is an interesting, like, you have to have an argument in your group thing, and B, is a good way to get out like diegetically what's dangerous and what's like what are the pros and cons of these places without popping up like a text box on screen. You know, if one guy's like, the river is going to box us in, he's going to be able to find us really easy if we go in the river, and the other guy's like, yeah, but it's better than the mountain, and here's why. Like that's kind of an interesting sort of like, I don't know how you'd script that, but it would be an interesting dynamic sort of like argument you guys have at the split point.
Yeah, I mean, you going on incomplete information too, which is cool. Like, I think it's nice to give you just enough to know like what kind of experience it might be, but not like completely reveal it, so that that path has surprises. Mm-hmm. And throwing some things, some scripted, some AI like in the way. Like it could be cool to just sort of like say that you have to stay close to people. That's like a thing, but in the middle of a firefight or whatever, you might run. And then if you're with somebody else or near somebody else, or those two people are together, they can survive,
Yeah.
And then you get picked off, and now there's a new leader. And that's
one of the... if you died, you just like re-inhabit a different body? That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, something like that. Where awesome. It's like, okay, that was a new leader. Now that's who you are. You're playing that person now.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Like stuff like that could be kind of cool.
Yeah, that would be really cool for like replay value. Like if different people could make it to the end based on who you ended up getting killed as you play.
Yeah, I like
that.
Like,
and I guess you could make the Predator AI like focus on the player character. That way you kind of have to. I'm trying to say. I feel like some game kind of does this, right? But the more you play as a character, the more likely they are to be picked off. So that way you could kind of bounce. You might be even able to bounce back and forth, and then the one that you like most, or the one that gives you the most kind of valuable skill set, like playing as them more often, you'll be deterred from that, right? Because
if you play Bill Duke, can you just like shave yourself at any time?
I hope so, or else I don't know why we're making this game.
That would be great if that kind of thing though replaced like emotes. Like, if you're...
Oh, man.
Like a lot of games have emotes now where you just dance or whatever, but it'd be cool if like they just had little character quirks that you could just repeatedly do, and then people would respond to that in the game, where they would say like, fuck, like, what are you doing? Like, stop
you
saving your fucking head. It's creeping me out.
You spit out your fucking tobacco juice on a guy's shoe.
Exactly.
Or if you're playing as Hawkins, you can just say really inappropriate jokes about your girlfriend to try to get the one guy to laugh.
I love that he keeps doing that in the movie. But like, and then again, like it just stop, like just drop that thread. It's really funny.
Yeah,
he dies.
Oh, well, okay. They dropped the thread before that.
The weird part is he only does it twice, and like both times he just only engages Billy to tell him the joke.
It's funny that he's like obsessed with making Billy laugh. It's really good.
The first time he just gets literally nothing. Like he just gets embarrassed and awkward, and then the second time he gets this giant belly laugh with like essentially the same joke.
Yeah, basically. And then the Predator uses that sound clip
it's really
as
creepy.
He's dying. Yeah, it's super creepy. But like the Predator being able to mimic character voices is one of those things that I feel like they never really... I think they did more in Predator 2, I don't remember. But in the first movie, it's so easy to miss because he only really does it once with Billy's voice, because... He's recorded a bunch of dialogue from them. Like I think he has Mac saying like over here, like whispering over here a couple times, but like he never actually uses it to like trap anyone or bait anyone. So the idea of, you lose somebody on your team, you don't know where they've gone, and then they whisper to you, and it could be the Predator, it could be them, and you don't know, and you have to like sort of make a decision after whether or not to go after that is cool. And I don't know how the hell you design a Predator AI to be that fucking smart. Maybe it is a player, but that would be a cool like piece of like arsenal in their tool belt.
Well, it would it'd actually be kind of cool if like there's so much chatter in the game while you're in the woods, like not a bunch, like enough to make sense, but like you would be able to hear a line that somebody else spoke earlier, and if you were smart enough to recognize that they said it, then you would like it would be cool to kind of just have that be built into the like if that person is missing, the game would know that, and it would also know like that line was spoken. So
that
you could easily have the Predator like just playing it back for you could be really cool.
He doesn't even have to be missing, right? Like that could be kind of the thing about it. He might even be dead, right? Like he can still just record the line as he's heard it, and then as long as you're not playing as that character, and whether it's all based on whether or not you remember having heard that before, Like you,
oh man,
you could actually think. But in that way, it's not always like if you hear it, the character's dead. You know what I mean? Like you might actually go investigate it, and sometimes it's
really that. Yeah, you would want to mix it up so it's not always like, well, I heard that line, it's got to be a dead guy. You'd want to like 50-50 it, right, or 60-40 it.
Yeah.
Do you know? Before you move on, I do think that like there's a weird him not using that. It's almost like a weird character thing for the Predator to be collecting those voice lines.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool. It's like I didn't think about it that way, but like he does sort of have a character through what you see him doing in that movie. It's bizarre.
You're right, because like at the end he like takes his gun off and decides to like go mano a mano with Schwarzenegger. Mm-hmm. Like he decides like, all right, we're gonna like fisticuffs this shit, which is a weird macho choice for a fucked up looking alien, you know. I guess because he feels like at this point he's going to win, so it's just more of like I'm going to just take pride in this beating. But he definitely like has a personality, you know, which you don't really get to the last like 15-20 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, it's weird.
I got really excited a second ago thinking about this. The idea that like in the opening sequence of the game, the scripted like whatever the Predator first comes after you, I do like the idea of you being just like a bunch of dudes. Over-equipped dudes on like a elk hunting trip, like a regular old like orange vest hunting trip. That's kind of interesting to me because you're well equipped and you're probably trained to use weapons, but you're not like a military guy. You're not going to use like hand signals to surround the Predator. I think that's kind of interesting. But the idea that in that sequence, it's sort of randomized. You always lose like 2 or 3 people in that opening sequence before you even begin the game, and who it is kind of randomized. So, you know, you might have 2 medics and a grenadier and like a specialist, whatever that means. And in the opening sequence, you lose both medics. And you're like, fuck, okay, I've just been handicapped and like I just happen to have lost these 2 specific people, so I need to do something like, you know what I mean? Like the opening of the game, you already lose a handful of people from your squad. So you feel the threat of the Predator right away. And you feel that loss very early on. So it kind of teaches you like, listen, people are going to die and you're going to lose their abilities. So it teaches that, but it's also just it randomizes a starting group of people you're with every single time you play.
I was thinking about you guys were talking about branching earlier too, and I think Sean mentioned like you don't go this way because there's this potential danger. You know, I think you said Death Mountain or something like that. But
don't go to Death Mountain. There's death there.
Well, that's just Zelda, though. It's Zelda. Yeah. It's called Death Mountain.
Yeah, but you always go to Death Mountain in Zelda.
Yeah, you do. You want to too.
What I was thinking is like in most of the movies, or at least the first 2, there is still an element of like human to human combat, and kind of like if we're going with this like Freeman militia thing, you can go this way, but. You're walking up with a bunch of weapons and blood all over you, and maybe there is another human antagonistic force up there,
Interesting.
And that way you wouldn't just be limited to combat potentially with the Predator, and then he could still show up and fuck up everyone's day, but it could just then complicate another interaction, if that makes sense, like another confrontation, and that might be something that you can avoid, but it's potentially harder. You won't get their weapons or whatever it is.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, like the Carl Weathers character, Carl Weathers, being sort of like they have an antagonistic duality. I mean, and then they go fight a bunch of rebels and stuff. But the idea that one of the guys you can't trust in your team, like they have the woman like Anna, and she eventually just becomes like, I'll join you. I'm just going to be your friend now because we have a common enemy. But there being another group out there that's antagonistic, that every time you meet them, the Predator comes and fucks shit up, and you have to either team up or you lose some extra people or something. That's definitely interesting.
Or maybe in the story of our game, like if you do go engage them, and then Predator comes and fucks shit up, like everybody from that party dies except for one person, and then you're surviving with somebody you don't know if you can trust fully.
Yeah.
Just other options to kind of like round out so that you're not always just fighting one Predator. Something that kind of came up organically, it seemed like. And like thematically, those movies do at least try to hit on, like I almost joked about it before, but the first movie, like the word Predator, it's like in that first sequence when they just attack like the the gorillas.
Yeah, they just obliterate them.
Yeah, like they're being predators too, like.
Man is the ultimate sport, says this movie.
Yeah.
Like, literally.
But you might just be able to inject some of that element into the game too, just to kind of shake it up a bit. Depending on if it makes sense for the fiction of the story.
I mean, having people in your group that you don't fully trust is always an interesting dynamic. Especially because, like, listen, we have this other thing out there, but can I, like, it's your watch. Are you going to fuck this up and get a bunch of people killed? In that similar kind of, like, The Walking Dead show, like, there's always the interpersonal shit that then gets interrupted by a zombie attack or something. And then they fend off the zombies and some people die, and then they go back to bickering. And there's always some interesting character stuff you can do there.
Yeah.
So, the idea of, like, you're out hunting and you're sort of these armed dudes. What is the end goal? The idea of, like, at first blush, I like the idea of, like, trying to get back to your compound, like your weird doomsday prepper compound. But I don't like. Is it a town? Because I feel like it would be really dangerous to lead this thing back to, like, a populated area. Like, I'm not sure. Is your goal
like 20, it's like 20 families, and, like, 10 of them are dead before you start. Or whatever, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
I don't know.
I'm saying that do you start in town or do you end in town? Or do you, like, do a loop back?
Well, you guys like Chris, I think, or somebody was pitching earlier that you get to a place and that's your goal. And that's cool. I mean, like, it could be that, yeah, you get there and that's what it is. I think that it lends itself to there being a finale in a way that isn't, because, like, when I was thinking of crafting earlier, I was thinking of, like, Last of Us style crafting, where it's like it's not much. It's like things you can do. They
make, like, a shiv out of a scissors blade.
Yeah, but it's like real world shit that has just been repurposed. If you're out in the woods, that doesn't really work unless you're, like, making spears or, like, you know what I mean?
Right.
So there's something. I'm not saying we have to keep that element at all, but just the idea that, like, the suburban version of it, to me, that town, it makes sense for there to be guns in. It makes sense for there to be other things as well. And, like, if the town is big enough, you could make the whole game take place there.
That's true.
You know what I mean? Or you could start it there and then get to another place, like the other doomsday preppers on the other side of the mountain or whatever.
The Hatfields. You got to go from McCoy's
exactly,
to Hatfields.
Yeah. But, I mean, like, I think there is something interesting about existing in that, and then there being, it's kind of like the suburbs, except that there's, like, a shooting range,
right?
Like it's like Tremors, the basement in Tremors, where in this game we don't literally use every gun we have at the same time to destroy one monster.
I really love that you just used as Tremors as a cultural touchstone, because I immediately knew what you were going for.
It's so good. That scene, that whole movie is amazing. But just the idea that like, there's this couple in town who's got 400 guns.
I think the more you talk about it, the more I actually am super into most of the game taking place in a suburban location, just because it is so different. Like, Predator 1 took place in the jungle. Predator 2 took place in, like, I don't know, Manhattan or New York or LA or some, like, big urban city, right? And so having this be in the suburbs could be really interesting. It would definitely, like, level design and layout and stuff would be really important, because, how different areas look, and because, like, in suburbs, a lot of those houses look similar, so you'd have to, like, make sure that it felt different and you're actually progressing from place to place. Like, you might not have as much ability to do branching paths through. I guess you'd have to have, like, the town center and, the marketplace, and, you could definitely find small places to branch the location you're in. So we'd have to just make sure it felt like a big enough space to play in, which I think it is possible. But the more you talk about it, the more I am interested in exploring that.
It doesn't have to be the whole game either. I mean, it could be part of it. It could be, it doesn't preclude us from going out into the surrounding area either, if it's pretty secluded. I think there's a lot of, it could even be like, do we stay here? Do we leave? As part of the, we can hole up here. We have a lot of ammo, but, if we get out of here, then maybe it'll leave us alone. Like, there's a lot of arguments to be made.
You also, I mean, kind of was kind of talking about it before, where you could change the objective based on the narrative. But if you start, like, if you're on like a hunting trip or whatever, you know, you could kind of design the situation and the information that you get as a player, like, based on, like, you could design the narrative so that, like, we only get the information as the player character does. So, like, you know, the first goal could be, like, get to your car or whatever, and then you get to a car, and then it triggers a cutscene, and the character doesn't know that this thing is going to follow them back to suburbia, right? Like, they just think they're just getting the safety of escape, right?
Yeah,
So,
like the first section of the game.
Yeah, and then, like, you might be able to just play that, like, you know, and then once you get to suburbia, like, the thing shows up, and it's like, fuck, I now I have to get this place evacuated or draw it away from here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you might be able to
cool.
just change the goal with that in mind. And, like, I didn't know as a player that I was going to go, that the player character was going to go back here. All I knew is I had to get to this car, and the characters weren't talking about it, right? And they weren't thinking about this, whatever the fuck was attacking them was going to follow them back to suburbia, you know?
It's definitely a tough one because you have that disconnect between the player and the character, where the player probably knows the details of what a predator is and like what they can do and their capabilities and the fact that they're invisible and have heat vision and shit. And there's a chance they don't, but like you're gonna get that moment when the characters are like, "It's fine, let's just run back home and it will be fine," and the player's like, "You morons, you have no idea." And it's not a big deal, but there's definitely like the characters themselves have to learn these things over time, the way that Schwarzenegger and his kind of team did. At first they thought it was rebels in the trees, you know, and then they realized it's hunting them. It's one thing. It's invisible. It can bleed, and it has all these advanced weapons. And they kind of like pick it. They figure it out as they go by like examining like the bodies of their friends and actually witnessing it. So I think you need a similar like journey like of information for those characters, like to figure out what it's capable of, and maybe that unlocks like a crafting thing, or it unlocks some sort of like actionable thing that you can do now that you know it has heat vision. Before that, you couldn't really like actively look to lower your body temperature, and now you can. And so now you have a new, as Sean, you were saying at the beginning of the podcast, you have like slowly unlocking abilities as your understanding of what this thing is kind of grows, you know.
Yeah, I mean, we'd have to, as designers, come up with different ways than you've seen to thwart it. So even if you did know, you know, that this thing had heat vision, like you don't know how you're going to combat that, right? Like we immediately start the game where it's the dry season. There's no mud anywhere.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and that's dumb, but it also does take that away immediately. You know, it's like dusty as fuck, and or like it's in the desert kind of or something. You know, like it just changes things up in a way that you don't really have a good sense of how to combat it necessarily. You sort of know you know what its powers are immediately, maybe, but you don't know how to do anything about it, and that's what you're getting to earn through playing.
Yeah, that's cool. I like the idea that you might figure it out, but there's nothing you can do about it at the time. I also like the idea that because a lot of in the ending of the movie, the first movie, Schwarzenegger is oddly like somehow the mud, as you said, somehow camouflages his entire body's heat to the point where he looks like he's not alive. But he also, it's a movement thing, right? Like if he moves, it'll see him. So you can get some really cool tense moments where you're hiding in, you know, whatever you're using to mask your body temperature, a thermal blanket or something, and you just see its feet go by and you can't move. You don't know when it's safe to move again and to like try and flank it or jump it or whatever. But just having that thing walk by you and just being unable to move is just such a good. I mean, other games have done it, but it's always something that really feels really tense and good.
The best version of that, for some reason, and the worst at the same time, because it was executed well and poorly, was Until Dawn. Because like literally, you can't move the controller because it has a gyro in it.
Oh
so
man,
you had to stay completely still whenever something like that would happen. They didn't do it very often, and the problem with it was that they didn't telegraph that it was what you were going to be doing early enough. So I would like move and like instantly die, like because I didn't know it was coming early enough. But like I think that like that was it was like tense because you were trying not to move your hands, you know, and it was basically the same thing that the character was doing.
I like that. That's cool. I mean, you definitely have to have a certain amount of like give. Like you can move a little bit, but it kind of stops. You know, like you can like get the idea of like, okay, I can't do that again. Like there's got to be some forgiveness to it, where you can't just screw up once and die. But that's pretty rad. I like that's a really cool idea. Let's steal it.
Let's steal it until dawn. Sorry, I'm yawning.
Yeah, cut that
until
out.
Yawn.
Oh my god.
Yawn until
I
dawn.
refuse to let that exist in the episode. Cut that out immediately.
No.
Okay. So yeah, how does this end? How does this game end? Do they track it down and like get back to their stash of guns and just like face off? Because in that movie, in Predator, they set up like okay, we're gonna hold this position and wait for it to come to us and like booby trap and wire up the place, and once it comes to us, we're gonna kill it. And then there's a point in the movie they're like, fuck it, just run, just get to the chopper. And sorry, I had to do it once. And so their plan, like their tactics change. So how do you feel like we would sort of do that in this video game?
I think you get a Predator weapon, like a disc or something, and then you kill it with the disc, and then a bunch of other Predators come up and give you like a really old gun.
Fuck off. Are you just quoting the ending of Predator 2?
Of course I am.
Yeah, good.
But I think there has to be a showdown with the...
They all just come up and respect, like, we respect you for killing one of ours.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah, exactly. No, but I think you're not going to... It's gonna feel like you get gypped if you get out of this without a big showdown with the Predator, you know?
Yeah, I agree.
Well, I think it would be hard to design, but I do think that like the idea that you get to the town and there's like 7 or 8 houses there, and it's like in a contained area that has a lot of like resources, and you're like the last one left, and depending on what your skill set is, right?
That's cool.
Depending on who you are, you have to take it down in a different way because you're the one who's survived.
You're the school teacher. Fuck.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you just use a lot of Scotch tape.
Put it in detention.
Yeah, but I mean, like there's something to the idea that like the resources are all available to you, but not all of them are your forte. And if we've done a good job combining those things together in a way that you have strengths and weaknesses, and that showdown could last a while. It could be it could be like the end battle in Metal Gear Solid 3. Which that can last a long time because it's a sniper fight and you don't want them to see you moving, and like it's just cool. It's like it's something that you don't really do. Yeah. You'd have to like be careful, and you'd have to be. It could get frustrating if we weren't careful. So I like the idea that design, but
you always whittle it down to one person at that point, and you're always stuck with one person. That's another good reason to try and keep everybody alive, because at the end when there's only one person left, like if you haven't done a good job of keeping the person you want to be alive, then you're kind of stuck with the fucking school teacher or whatever. And then it does become that fight that you mentioned for Metal Gear Solid, where you're sneaking around and trying to build traps, and put spikes on tree branches, and build weird like propane tank bombs or whatever, and it's coming or it's trying to find you, so you're trying to like sneak and do these things at the same time and take a shot at it when you can, and then when it runs at you, you got to hide. Like that's cool because it feels different. Like we've been talking a lot about this hiding mechanic, and it does feel like there are many games that kind of do that, but they never eventually force you into a square like an arena. It's like, okay, one of you's leaving this place, so you have to kill it. You can't hide anymore. And we're not going to overpower you. We're not going to give you all the guns in the game and just have it be like an arcade fun. It's just like a satisfying moment where you just blow its head off. It's going to be a you need to get out if you're alive kind of moment, and that feels really different, and it feels good for the ending of the game.
Cool.
You could be like the hacker, and somehow you hack into like his self-destruct thing.
you hack into his arm, into
Wi-Fi.
His wrist computer.
Yeah, you're Jeff Goldblum.
Oh man, you upload a virus to it.
Yeah. And you have to self-destruct.
You're Lex from Jurassic Park.
Oh man! It's a Unix system. Is that what you're telling me?
Yes, it's a Unix system. She knows this.
The most advanced hunting alien we've ever met uses Unix.
Yeah,
or Linux, whatever. That's fucking good. I'm super into that.
It's a good system.
Yeah, but you have to have the like pocket computer that like the kid from Terminator 2 had that was like hacking ATMs. like black and white, like 3x12-inch computer. You know?
Like a credit card with a wire tap.
Yeah, like a ribbon attached to it. Yeah, that's you have that computer.
And then when he hacks in, finally he says "easy money," and then the predator blows up.
Off in the distance, you see like a nuclear explosion.
Yeah.
Oh man. There's a story I want to tell you guys once we're actually finished with the episode because it's a tangent. But remind me, there's a thing I want to mention.
Okay, but we'll leave this part in on the episode so that the audience doesn't hear it.
Please do. Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
You don't get to hear it, audience.
Oh yeah, we leave this in and cut the thing out that I say. Perfect.
Fucking assholes. Fuck you.
Wow. Jeez. No wonder everyone listens to the Rocket Jump podcast and not our podcast. God.
Well, it's also better, I would imagine.
Yeah, probably yes. Wow, rough. Okay, how do we want to end this this podcast?
I think we just did forever.
Yeah.
Well said. Well, thanks for joining us as we just completely self-destruct our podcast. Like a predator defeated in combat, we self-destructed the shit out of this podcast.
Yeah, and I think that Chris was the only one left standing.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
He ran far enough away from the nuclear explosion.
I don't know how that worked.
All right.
Well, you have to do the outro because you're the only one left alive.
Okay, well, thanks for listening to Storied this week. Sean and Harrison are dead. And I ain't got time to bleed.
Hey, that's it for this week's show. If you'd like to find out more about us, please follow us at StoriedCast on Twitter. And if you have any feedback for the show or any ideas for future episodes, please email us at storiedcast@gmail.com.
Storied is Chris Rebbert, Harrison Pink, and Sean Ainsworth, and our music is composed by the amazing Jared Emerson Johnson. Thanks so much for listening.